And here we are. So, hey everyone. Most of you probably don't recognize me. Thank you so much for tuning in, first off. My name is Oscar, and I'm the CEO of Epidemic Sound. I'm also one of co-founders. So for the last 10 years, I've been busy building away at Epidemic. Normally, though, I don't do that in front of the camera. But I think it's fair to say that we don't live in normal times right now. This is the second ever Instagram Live that we've done, and we're doing it with a couple of specific purposes. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to help not just ourselves, but basically the entire creative ecosystem, try to understand how we can adapt to the new normal, how we can help each other still remain positive, remain creative, addressing some of the challenges, looking at some of the opportunities that we have, and basically as a collective just coming together. I think if it's one thing that I've found during the last couple of weeks being living social distancing, it's the importance of digital togetherness. It's just so crushing to be alone physically, and so getting together digitally is something that we want to do. So 2 weeks ago we kicked things off. We had the privilege to talk to LA to that time as well. And so I spoke to Justine and to Marcus, who are two passionate content creators who spoke about the art of producing content, staying positive, investing in themselves. And today I'm super excited to let you all know that we're going to be talking to Megan Wofford, who is a composer and a music creator and a pianist. And if we have technology on our side, I'm going to do my utmost to see if we can connect Megan now. So bear with me a few seconds. Megan!
Hi, Oscar.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. How is Los Angeles treating you?
It's good today. As you can see, we have sunshine out the windows.
That looks brilliant from where I'm sitting in Sweden, where we have everything normally but sunshine. That looks very exotic.
It's very nice. Yeah, I heard there was snow in Sweden last week, so.
Yeah, last week was crazy. I think we had basically 4 seasons in 1 week. So there was snow, there was sleet, there was sunshine, there was rain, there was basically everything. So
Oh,
they threw the entire farm, but I think we weathered through that as well.
good, good.
So Megan, I thought that maybe to start things off, do you think you could tell the viewers a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. Well, as you know, my name is Megan Wofford, and I'm located here in Los Angeles. And I'm a composer and a pianist, studio musician. Yeah, this has been my only job my whole life, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Playing music and teaching music and creating music.
And so out of curiosity, how did you get into music? Because it started very early in your life, right?
It did. Both my parents are musicians. My mom is an accomplished classical pianist and singer, and my dad's a guitar player, singer. Both my siblings are musicians. So we just had a really musical house. I grew up hearing music and listening to music, and my mom started teaching me how to play the piano at a very young age. Yeah.
Did you ever have a choice? I have friends who have parents who are doctors, and sometimes I get the impression that that's something that runs in the family. Hearing you, it feels as though everyone around you is doing music. Is there anyone who doesn't do music?
Yes, my mom and I do music professionally,
Okay,
but
got it,
my dad and my two siblings have other careers. So we all
got it.
had a choice.
Mm.
And we had a choice between like sports and music lessons, but we all loved music that much. I mean, we still played sports and stuff, but
Got it.
not to the point where we wanted to do other activities more than music. So
So Megan, we're gonna deep dive into your processes, your creative inputs, obviously your music. We're gonna get to listen to some music later on as well. But I thought that maybe could you maybe share a little bit sort of taking a step back, if you look at yourself, what kind of music do you listen to, or what kind of stuff do you watch sort of in general in terms of consuming music? And has that changed during the last couple of weeks during sort of the Corona times where there's a heightened sense of maybe anxiety?
Of what I listen to,
Yeah.
I listen to all kinds of genres, to be honest, not just what I create or love. I and I think I wouldn't say my listening has changed a ton. I still listen to a lot of music, but I've probably been playing more and practicing more
Yeah.
of just everything, sight reading, classical, and going back over old jazz songs I used to have polished up and don't have anymore. Um, Listening to R&B, soul, hip hop,
Mm.
and just spending more time at the piano
Mm.
because that's kind of where we're at right now is inside.
Yeah. Tell me
Yeah.
about it. I'm thinking that I think that if I'm getting the numbers correct, we're seeing across the world that some of the music listening patterns are changing a little bit. And I think
Uh-huh.
it's so interesting because it seems to tie into people's habits. So when people commute, they listen to a certain kind of music. When they're at work, they listen to certain kinds of music. When you come home and you want to relax, you listen to certain kinds of music. And I
Right.
just find it so fascinating now that we're in sort of this indoor period. You had a great word for it. You're not calling it quarantine, right? You have a different place instead of lockdown. What's the term you're using in LA?
They call it a shelter in place here in LA. I think it's technically, yeah, a lockdown, but I think it sounds less daunting to say
Yeah,
shelter in place.
I 100% agree. I think we should use
Yeah.
shelter in place instead. I think that's way better. But sort of when the routines change, it seems as though listening habits change as well. And I'm looking at my own music consumption. I think I'm listening sort of even less vocals. I'm listening to more sort of stuff that gets me into the right mood, right sort of peace of mind. I find it's very, very clear that when you can't interact with people, when you don't get that kind of emotion and feeling in interactions, I
Mm-hmm.
seek it much, much more in music and in comfort and in other stuff, right? So I think that maybe
Yeah.
that's a good sort of segue into sort of looking at yourself, and when you sort of when you compose music, do you use rituals and routines and stuff like that? How does that typically work for you?
I do sometimes. And then sometimes I let it, a lot of the stuff that I write, my own original compositions, um, sometimes I have a set plan and I know I have to, if I have, a project I'm working on now, I have a deadline, I have to turn it in. I can be pretty routine about it. But a lot of times I just, when we've been in quarantine and when we've not, I'll sit down at the piano and just play a bunch, see what comes out, and then go from there. If I find something that I like, I'll often take like a voice memo of it on my phone. If
Mm-hmm.
I'm at my upright piano, if I'm in a studio, I'll record whatever idea I have into Logic, which is the DAW that I work in. Um, and sometimes I'll finish it like all there, like in a couple hours. And other times I'll like let it sit for a couple days and then come back if I don't feel like I have, the next piece or the next portion of it, instead of rushing myself to just finish a song and create it just because I have to or have a deadline, if that makes sense.
Okay, so just so I get this clear and so I can explain this to our viewers, because I think this is quite rare, right? Because you don't use notation at all. You don't write it down. You keep it all part in your head, but also record it. And so that's how you work with sort of bringing a track to life.
For my own music, yes. If I'm writing someone else's stuff out, I'll make a full chart and do the whole thing, write it up in, music notation software. My own stuff, I seem to just remember in my head. And if I don't, I put it, I record a voice note of it rather than take the time to notate it and have to go back and change something if I don't like it. It's a lot easier to just change something if you haven't actually notated it down. You just
Yeah.
change it or, delete that part out of Logic or whatever, just,
Yeah.
recording software you work in. Yeah, but I have not notated any of my original songs. No.
But I find it incredible that you can keep that in your head, because it's one thing when we as consumers hear one of your finished tracks, they're beautiful, but there's so much to it. The process of getting there, is it almost as though you can see the track in your head taking different routes and you determine, or does the memory sit in your fingers? Or so if you, how would you represent sort of remembering an entire track as you create it?
Both in my head and in my fingers. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Thank you.
So I have a little bit, it's a beast of a question, but sort of, I'd really like to hear you. So how can you transform your house from a prison of isolation to like a temple of inspiration?
That's a good question. And I like how it's phrased.
So to give you some time while you're thinking about it, I can talk about my own shortcomings. So
Sure.
just to give you examples. So I think we all find ourselves sitting at home, and it can be quite daunting. I'm used to leaving the house and something happens in my mind when when I step out, I get on my bike or I get into public transport or in a car or whatever it might be. So I physically leave a space. It's almost as though my mind shifts gears. And when I come home in the evening, normally it's almost as though I check out part of my brain at the door, because home is where I relax. I don't have to perform, for lack of a better word, academically or intellectually. This is a safe place, it's family, it's where you recharge and you do other things. We now find ourselves, all of us, in this position where you have to both recharge but also excel and create stuff at home, and you can't really leave it because of the sort of social surroundings haven't changed that much. So I find it super difficult finding the tools in order to try and address that and almost change tempo, so from recharge mode into actually create mode. Are you finding anything that helps?
Yeah, I think for me, well, first off, I'll say we are quarantined here, but I do a lot of work from home in general. So taking that into consideration. But I know a lot of creators have offsite studios they go to, or play out a bunch. So it is a huge change. I think for me personally, still sticking to some sort of routine during the day and a creative routine. Even if I don't write something during the day, I'm making sure to at least play every day or sight read or, go over an old song, listen to music, even reading. And, even in a time like this, watching movies with good scores or TV shows with, you know, that have been scored well.
Yeah.
Not that some haven't, but still kind of setting a regular schedule for yourself, even if you're just staying in your house throughout the day.
Yeah.
That helped me stay focused and just going day by day. I mean, I think this will eventually end, and not to think of it as a long-term thing.
Yeah.
But
I think you raised such an interesting point though, Megan, because you alluded to that even in a world where we're not self-quarantining, as a composer and as a music creator, you find yourselves quite often at home as well, composing. And so I would argue, I think that sort of you are probably much better equipped to deal with where we're at now than many others of extroverts or people who work outside a lot. So I think that's an additional reason why I think it's so interesting, why people are so curious to hear sort of your tips and tricks and how you work. What about some of the ways that you're using to stay creative? Do you have sort of, you mentioned a few sort of external things, but do you have procedures? I know that a lot of writers have, I sort of 60 minutes in the morning, always in front of the machine, no matter what. I have to sit down and do this. Is there a specific line of sort of content consumption or routines in your day that you use to help you get started or help you finish or help you sort of find inspiration?
I think for me, I don't like to think about forcing myself because I don't ever want music to be a forced thing and turn into this, like, I have to do it because I get to do it. I mean, the fact that I can create music for a living is a blessing to me. So I think for me that during this time in normal times is playing every day.
Yeah.
Whether, like I was saying before, like I'm actually like creating something and working on something for a specific project, or just playing, just to make sure I'm putting myself around music and staying inspired. And for me, playing different keyboard instruments. I'm sitting here at my piano, but at my home here, my husband and I have a back house, which we turned into a studio. So it's a full-blown studio out there. So I have lots of different keyboards and synths, and you know, there's a drum set, which I don't play, but lots of instruments. I think just putting myself in different creative situations during this time, and making sure to play something every day.
Yeah. So one thought that pops to mind, and there are so many questions, I have to pace myself. But creating those contexts, one way of finding that different element is to look into collabs and to do stuff with other people. Now we're in a position where that's much easier to do now because the digital nature of music production and cooperation tools. Is this something that you find yourself, have you done sort of a lot of collabs previously, or is it something that you see might be sort of becoming more and more interesting given where we're at right now?
I have done a lot of collaboration in the past here in LA. It was, you know, distanced apart. I made like a track for someone last week, a cover track that I played so they could sing on it at some point during this whole time. And I do a lot of collaboration too with my husband. He's an incredible music producer and multi-instrumentalist. So we have a lot of fun playing music together and going back and forth with music ideas, whether it's on piano or guitar or at the computer. So that's a very helpful thing during this time, but just in general too. I think I think all music creators should explore collaborations, because sometimes you can get so stuck in your own head and be your worst critic. I know I am. Of just thinking like, I don't know about that. So having someone else listen to what you're creating, or listening to what someone else is creating, and then working on stuff together as well.
Yeah. Speaking about working on stuff together, I know that you've done a lot of touring throughout the years, right?
Yes, I have done some touring throughout the years. Yeah.
So could you tell us a little bit about that, and then sort of help us understand where are we at right now? Because I'm assuming it's a pretty grim situation right now.
It is. Yeah. When I first moved up to LA, I don't know, years ago, like 10 or 11 years ago, I kind of started out doing a lot of teaching, like one-on-one students, which I still have a handful of, and then focusing a lot of my time and energy on networking to get live gigs and tours. And I did end up getting to do quite a bit of that over the years, just with different American pop artists here. And that is a super fun job. Very exhausting, but super fun traveling like that. In this time, I feel grateful. I haven't probably gone on a tour in a year and a half now. I've focused my efforts on creating from home and kind of creating a steady income that way from writing music. But I have so many friends in the touring industry, and it's really come to a complete halt. There's no, there's not a way to have a tour right now.
I know, right?
What we have. I've heard of some of the artists that some of my friends and other touring musicians, singers work for, have paid them throughout this time, which is really cool. But I don't know. I don't think all of them can afford. Maybe they can, depending on the level of the artist, afford to do that. So many friends have lost almost all, if not all, of their work. You know, if they were scheduled on a tour from May until November, that has to be moved, changed. And I don't really think we know what it'll look like when the
When we bounce back.
lift, exactly how long that'll take to ramp up to get a tour, if everybody, is going to be able to pack into a arena, with 20,000 people right
Yeah.
away. I'm not sure. I
Yeah.
think that's one of the scary things for a lot of musicians who make most of their income solely as touring musicians, is they don't
Yeah.
know how that's gonna pick back up, or when. I'm sure it eventually will. I just don't know how
Huh.
that'll, is if as soon as it lifts, it's there and back to work. I would hope so, but I don't know.
So, touring obviously centers around the element of live, and I think that as you can't tour, so that disappears. But are you picking up on any of your friends? For example, what we're doing now, Megan. So we're performing live, but it's in a digital context. I've heard that services like Patreon, where people can become
Mhm.
patrons and support musicians and content creators in general, and maybe in particular in times like this. Do you hear any sort of word on the grapevine that people are experimenting with more digital live or digital touring or stuff like that? Or is that still just on the fringes?
I haven't seen any digital, well, maybe a couple like digital shows, but it kind of has to be one person at a time.
Mm.
I
Yeah.
think there's somewhat of a lag when two musicians are playing via
Mm.
these types of settings.
Yeah.
But I've seen lots and lots of people posting more and more content. I
Yeah.
think that's a good outlet, and they can still go live and play for people. And
Mm.
I've even seen some people do it, where they go live and they put up their, PayPal or Apple Pay and
Mm.
ask if people want to give tips
Yeah.
as they're playing, just to kind of supplement maybe some of what they've lost during this time. Yeah.
Got it. So, when these opportunities become more and more scarce, I think that something that we spoke about last week when we spoke to Justine and to Marcus is that you're finding that your calendar frees up because you can't go on tour, you can't go outside. And instead, people are looking more to invest in themselves, more in education, or you could argue that entertainment is an investment, but I'm more specifically talking about people investing more. They have more time and maybe picking up extra traits or talents or learning other stuff. So is this something that you've sort of thought about as well, seeing now as a good opportunity to try new things, to sort of try and develop certain skills even more?
Yes, very much so. I haven't like picked up, a random skill per se, but trying to develop my skills more in
Mm.
Logic, which is, for those watching, a recording software
Yeah.
that I create my songs in. Just trying to get more proficient at like editing and just doing all the tweaks of what would need to be done
Mm.
on my own, faster, more efficient. I have the time, more time to do it now. So instead of, kind of putting that off, I think for me, that's
Yeah.
been something to focus on, is really digging into Logic. And I know I've heard other creators,
Mm.
learned a whole new program during this time just
Yeah.
because they have the time. And I think that's important. I think even when we have live things available,
Mm.
to play and create money, I think we do live in such a digital world in general that
Mm.
knowing some sort of recording software
Yeah.
is really important.
Yeah.
Even just enough to like put your own stuff in it, whether it's Logic or Pro Tools or Cubase or Reason. There's a bunch of different ones, but being able to just get your way around in that a little bit, I think, is helpful
Yeah.
at all times.
Yeah. And I think that, at least according to my experience, I think that there's a lot to be said about the music industry in general, and it can definitely improve. But I think that one aspect of the music industry, which I think is quite fascinating, which people don't talk to that often, is the whole notion of it's built up quite a bit around apprenticeship. So it's typically people teaching other people. So nowadays, to your point, Megan, there's this opportunity. You can learn these tools, these programs. There are fantastic tutorials that you can watch on Vimeo or YouTube or different video streaming platforms.
Mm-hmm.
You can listen to podcasts where people have pre-recorded stuff and share some of their advice. But I also think that something that we can really lean into now is the way that you historically have taught how you record stuff or how you write stuff, is people share their experiences. This is a hack. This is how I program drums, or this is how I do this, or this is when I struggle with my top line or with my lyrics, or when I can't get the composition right. People share, and it's very much a trait that's shared from person to person and to some extent generation to generation. And just tapping into that and maybe encouraging people to pay it forward, to open up, to have tutorials, because you don't have to do it just because you're a great altruist and it's from the bottom of your heart. I think there's a win-win for everyone, because everyone has small different workarounds and tricks and experiences and talent that they can bring to the table that just create such a great opportunity to learn from that, right?
Yes, and I've seen a couple posts here and there online about people just offering their services for free during this time, you know, posting tutorials or offering up an online lesson for, you know, a few select slots just to give back to people in the time. Yeah.
I like to think as well that sort of we're seeing more of that as well. I know that we're definitely leaning into that as a company, trying to see how we can open up, inspire, have workshops, be creative, and sort of try and help people use the time that they now have to sort of the best possible extent. But sharing stuff like this, I think, is crucial to get that point. So one thing I want to go back to, which you touched upon, Megan, and you did it with such emphasis, so I really want us to dig in here. We spoke about soundtracking content, and you said that sort of you really like that, especially if it's done well. So if something gets soundtracked well, can you speak a little bit to how do you refer, or what do you refer to when you talk about soundtracking stuff, and what are the elements of doing that well?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, as we all know, if we're watching a movie or a TV show and you mute the music, it takes a lot away from what's going on. And I think that would be show to show or movie to movie. I think really being able to match what's on the screen and the mood and the emotions of what's going on accurately. I mean, if you can make people feel something, that's the best thing when you're playing music. And not to say that, you know, all the actors, movies and films and TV shows aren't, you know, drawing from emotion too. Of course they are. But I think they wouldn't be the same without music behind them. So I think accurately matching a mood or emotions or, you know, just an overall scene or feeling of that scene would be, you know, and being true to whatever style you've been asked to write to as well.
So it might not come as a surprise, but I get asked that question quite a lot, and I like to refer to it a little bit as food. So if you're watching content which you think is great, entertainment nowadays, information, basically anything, right? I would argue the role of music and the role of soundtracking is to make it memorable and to make you feel something. Because I would argue, to your point, if you're watching a show or a piece of content and you turn up the sound, it's a bit like eating food, but with no taste. Yes. It might technically work, but it's not memorable. You don't feel anything. It doesn't hit you in your feels. It doesn't make you excited. It's not something you want to tell your friends about. You'd more go, yeah, that was nourishing, and I've forgotten it as soon as it sort of left the building. No pun intended. But but sort of if you add music to something and you add feelings, I think now more than ever, when we're all socially isolated, we can't touch and feel and hug each other. We can't feel anything. We're in the confines of our own houses. So getting access to music and stories and feeling stuff, I would argue that what you do on a daily basis is always important, but now much more than ever before because of the times that we're in right now.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And I think that something that we're seeing is that sort of the use of classical music is just sort of increasing more and more. And I know that you're seeing a lot of success across a ton of different platforms, not just streaming, but video. Can you talk, so what does it feel like sort of knowing and feeling that your music is being cherished and enjoyed by millions of people around the world?
Yeah, I feel grateful for that. That people listen to it and like it and want to keep listening to it when I release new songs and new EPs. That would be the hope. I mean, yeah, I think that's what I would. It makes you want to keep, creating.
Yeah.
Not that I do it for people listening to it. Of course, I think you have to first want to create and do it for yourself, just because you love it, because at some point someone won't like it, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But I do feel grateful to have people enjoying it and listening to it, whether they're studying or just winding down in the background. Yeah.
Megan, we're getting tons of questions and comments here while we're talking music is emotion and sort of talk about the best collabs you've ever done and stuff like that. Can you, speaking about your creative process, and can you when you write and create music and when you find inspiration, can you immediately feel what it is the track is going to convey, so the feeling of the track, or can it sometimes be an opposite? Can you find yourself being pessimistic and low but still finding the energy to write a track which is optimistic and romantic? Or do you need to be in the frame of mind of what you're trying to produce? How does that work?
For me, not necessarily. I don't necessarily have to be in the frame of mind. I think sometimes for me personally, playing or creating when feeling, like you said, pessimistic or low or, bummed about something, sometimes that's when you get the greatest stuff, because you have a lot of feeling inside, and it may come out being what you feel, or like you said, it may come out the opposite and be something that's uplifting and hopeful, if you were to to put a tag on what does this music make you feel. But and then sometimes I do sit down and think, okay, this time if I wrote 3 songs, the last 3, and they all were centered around a major key, if that makes sense for those watching, maybe the next one I write, I'll go minor, just to try something different, to create a different feel, a different emotion, or I'll blend the two, pull on both of the tonal sounds, as we kind of say in a very basic way. If you were to teach a child, major sounds happy, minor sounds sad, or I don't always like to say sad because minor doesn't always sound sad to me, but somber, thoughtful. Minor can be thoughtful too, not just sad. But I think it depends.
I think that's one of the talents that I historically have always admired, but now lately come to really crazy respect. The concept of being in an emotional state, but then at the same time being a creator and putting something else out there. So internally at our company, we're now we're investing a lot in communication and making sure that we can come together and we can see each other and we can talk, and we're constantly interacting. And I find it tough being maybe in a certain frame of mind or doing other things, but then being put in a situation where you're talking to many people, you're producing, or we're recording videos, or we're making content that's it's supposed to be in a certain direction. I have so much respect for what you do and what creators do, understanding that and finding the professionalism, the structure, the approaches, all the work that goes into making that happen at scale. It's yeah, I think it's amazing what you do.
Thank you.
Mm,
Thank you.
truly amazing. We have a few questions here which have popped in from people. And so one of them is, do you play other instruments other than the piano?
The piano's my main instrument. I do play the saxophone, but it's been a very long time since I have played that. This is a good time to pull it out and brush up on it again. But I did study saxophone for a long time as well.
Okay, maybe that's one of the things that we'll see. So you investing in some alone time with the saxophone. Another question was, do you have a process for making music with lyrics? I would assume as opposed to making instrumental music or with lyrics.
I am not a big lyricist, to be honest. I have done some collaborations and songwriting work where I have worked with incredible lyricists who, you know, top liners, as we say here in LA, who can write a melody and lyrics, you know, just in the blink of an eye. And I will create the music for it, or the chords and the structure. But me personally, I wouldn't call myself a lyricist. I have not written songs with lyrics.
Got it.
Yeah.
There was another question which just popped up on the screen now, which I love. Do you have a favorite part of the music process, as in writing, recording, performing? Are there certain, I would assume, like, are there certain moments when the hook of the track, or when it's done, or when the inspiration first comes to you, where you go like, oh, I have this has to come out? Or is it when it's edited and done and logic and you've exported it? And are there certain points in time which you think are like your wow moments?
You know, truthfully, I do love all of them. I think if I had a favorite, though, I think writing it and then performing it is probably, there's something about performing for people live, although I don't do a ton of it anymore, it's a different kind of feeling, in a good way. And I love the writing process. And recording is fun too. I think that would be like if I had to pick my weakest link out of the three, I'm still growing in my whole like recording skills. So some of it for me right now is still more technical, the recording part and then the editing. But I do like the finished, like you were saying, I do love the finished product of once something has been recorded and edited and tweaked. That's really nice. But the actual like editing process is probably not like my favorite.
Got it. And so just to recap, your favorite part is performing, right?
Yeah, writing and performing. I do love the writing portion as well.
So as the mother of all transitions, how about we use that as the transition into performing? Because for everyone listening, Megan has said that she would like to play for us today, right?
I would like to play a song, yes.
Would you like to tell us a little bit about what you've chosen to play for us?
Sure. I'm going to play an original composition that I finished just a couple weeks ago. It's kind of like we'd say modern classical.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So it's brand new and it's from your house at your piano, maybe where you sort of the inspiration first came to you. Megan, please take it away.
Wonderful.
stream of hela världen.
Thank you.
Megan, that was amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Oscar.
Wow, the amounts of hearts and comments and high fives and smiling faces that sort of flew over our screens now is incredible.
Oh,
Um,
thank you all.
Megan, I think that's such a wonderful note to end today's live session. Thank you so much for being such a great source of inspiration for everyone who loves your music, who gets to combine it with their storytelling, for sharing these feelings across the world as we're socially distancing, for introducing new words such as a sheltered place as opposed to lockdown, and to being so generous about sharing your experiences and your insight in terms of what we all can do in order to cope as best we can in these trying and difficult times.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for coming, and thank you everyone for watching and listening. We're going to be sharing this video across social media so you can get to enjoy the wisdom and the beautiful music. I encourage you all to listen to Megan's music everywhere. It's everywhere across the world. So please stay safe, everyone, and have a beautiful rest of the week. Megan, thank you so much for today.
Thank you, Oscar.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.